Hello, my dear friend. Welcome back to the Content with Character podcast. I am all sorts of jazzed up about all sorts of things over here today. It is a problem, let me tell you. It is a problem. I'm also recording this on the eve that it is supposed to be released. I'm recording this on Monday, which I never do. I'm usually way more ahead, but there's been a lot moving and shaking over here. So here we go. Last week, as the dust was starting to kind of like settle a little bit in my business and my life, enough to breathe at least, I started to get a flurry of ideas. And in fact, one night I got so many ideas for you, things I wanted to share with you and bring to life with you. I got so many ideas that I stayed up super late writing them all down in my notebook before they faded away from my brain's filing system, which, spoiler alert, it's either non-existent or it's really bad at filing things because it is always losing ideas. So all that to say, there's a lot coming down the pike. It's going to be very exciting. But today we're going to stick to the facts, nothing but the facts. And we're going to dive in to give a guest prep talk because here's the thing. I talk to a lot of business owners. I was just speaking to one on Saturday at the podcasting event that I was at. I talked to a lot of business owners who are dipping their toes in the water of podcast guesting or speaking, I should say, and or speaking. And it prompted me to share some like quick wins and takeaways for people who are aspiring to guest and speak more often. Now, on my previous podcast, She Built This, which I ran for 4.5 years, I saw far too many guests show up winging it or underplaying the opportunity that I had put in front of them of being a guest. And I'm sure that you have sat in rooms where the speaker was like, just a little bit underwhelming. I know that I most certainly have. And we don't want that when we are showing up. We want to show up prepared, consistent, giving great ahas and insights. We want peals of laughter from the audience, right? We want them roaring with cheers when we're done because they loved it so much. And we also want to get asked back again and again. Cue the Beauty and the Beast, or actually we're just going to do the intro music to this podcast, and let's talk all about guesting, being our guest. Welcome to Content with Character, the weekly podcast that'll give you the momentum you need to create content with more ease, clarity, and laughter. I'm your host, content copywriter Emily Aborn, and I'm all about unconventional marketing approaches. I believe in your big ideas, and I'm excited to help you share them in a way that's distinctly you. All right, so back to Beauty and the Beast for a moment there. They do talk a lot about being our guest and just sitting back and relaxing while everybody else does the rest, right? But the thing is, when you show up as a guest on a stage or on a podcast, it's like the opposite of being a guest at when you, say, stay in a castle with a beast or at a hotel or at your parents' house. We are not doing this it's not really when you get to kind of put your feet up and let them pamper us. We're not here to raid their fridge and steal all their favorite seltzers and eat their chocolate. Not that I do that when I'm at my parents' house. We are here to serve. Podcast guesting and speaking is really to be thought more of as a collaboration. It's a give. So I bring a lot to the table, and in return, they are giving me this big gift of sharing with their community or sharing their platform, right? So it's a win-win, and then because we are also impacting the people listening or in the audience, it is a win-win-win. But in order for that to happen, we all have to give, we all have to do our part. Which brings me to the first thing that I want to touch on. It does take some work and effort on the part of the guest. It's not just showing up and like it's just magical, right? It is a very powerful way to engage with new people and to grow your business. And it does take a little bit of effort on the guest's part. And that is really some of the things I want to get into today with the guesting prep talk. Now, I love podcast guesting and I love speaking for many, many reasons. One, it always leaves me feeling energized. It gives me an opportunity to share ideas, insights, information with new faces and new ears potentially. I love that form of connecting with people. I love being able to kind of like welcome them into my world by sort of immersing them into my world. I love the opportunity to build credibility and trust, to potentially bring on more collaborations. So often these experiences spark more ideas. And I also give them a little taste of what it's like to work with me. Like, chances are, if you don't like me, you're probably not going to enjoy working with me. And additionally, podcast guesting and speaking is also a great opportunity for you to create content that you're going to repurpose, create content that you're going to kind of use as your big idea, your big message, right? So it can be these really foundational pieces. It is awesome. I also think that it is amazing for like defining not just your voice and your message, like I just talked about, but also the impact of what you do. So it's a really great way to really hone in on like, what is that difference that I am making? What is the change that I want for the lives of other people? And then like, how do I really want to be guiding people forward? So it is a truly lovely ripple effect. And like I said, I leave energized each and every time I show up to speak or be a guest on somebody's podcast. So I'm actually going to get into who I think makes a great guest or speaker. But before I do, I just want to touch on things that could slow it down. Now, this might be just like a stage you're at. It might be the kind of person you are, but things that could like slow down the progress or the impact. Okay. So I only have 3 of them. I don't want to like belabor this, but number 1, if you are unclear on your message, it can be harder to show the value that you're bringing. It can be harder to find the right places to share it, and it can be harder to know where to even start. So it's not a stop. It's not a red light. It just means that you might need to work with somebody. My hand is also raised here because I do help people with this, but it may mean that you need to work with somebody to help you hone in on this before you move forward, before you start pitching yourself, right? And that's okay. Number 2, if you are not the kind of person who likes to be collaborative, I'm not saying this is a group project, okay? But there is a element of collaboration. This is not a solo expedition here. So if you're not a person who enjoys collaborating, if you're not ready to collaborate, I would say consider whether or not this is really for you. There's going to be a lot of somebody else's kind of like rules and guidelines you might need to follow. There's a lot to it. And it does take time, as I mentioned. So not all of that time is kind of up to you when you're going to be working on the things and doing the collaboration. So it's a good thing to remember. And if that's a deal breaker for you, it might just mean you wait until you have the time and energy to invest, or when you are feeling a little bit more collaborative and group-minded, right? And then number 3, if your only intention of being a podcast guest or a speaker is to sell, if it is not to connect or educate or guide, if it's strictly to sell, well, you're probably not listening to a podcast called Content with Character in the first place, but really, I want you to think about it because it is just not the heart I would recommend approaching all of this with. And it's going to kind of come through in some of the ways that you present yourself and pitch yourself, and it might not bode so well. So readjust if need be. Who I do recommend this fantastic opportunity for is individuals who know the crux of their message. And in many cases, this will mean that you have a specific area of expertise or a niche maybe that you're like very clear on. The other person I think that's a great opportunity for is somebody who is excited to just like deliver value or provide insights or inspiration. People who love sharing stories with really relevant takeaways and applications, or like in a parable form, right? That's a great fit. Folks who know that speaking is just as much about listening as it is talking. And of course, if you have good energy and you're up to the task, it is likely a good fit for you. So let's talk about what you need to get started and what you don't, in my professional opinion. And I say it's my opinion because this is not an exhaustive list, and there are going to be people out there that tell you, oh, you need these things, or some of it you actually can safely pass on, or at least pass on for now, and you can always build over time. So know that these are ideas you can refine and you can take your time. I am going to do my best to give you extended show notes for this. I can't promise. So I will put a list at least in the show notes today. So check those out if you want access to this list. And there are going to be some resources I mentioned throughout. Those are always going to be in the show notes. So let's get into like a few assets. These are optional, so that means they're nice to haves. And I would also caution you to please not overthink these things. They can all be worked on over time, but as you're pulling them together, don't do it haphazardly. Don't be like, well, this is just temporary. Do be thoughtful as you pull all of these things together. So I think that is important to have. Number one, some place where information about you, your topics, your bio, your headshot all live. This could be as simple as your LinkedIn profile. I have seen folks do a one sheet, which is like a super nice PDF, okay? Now, that's not required, but it is a great one-stop shop kind of thing. So it shows you, your topics, your bio, your headshot, all on that one sheet, as the name indicates. Another great spot for this is having a page designated on your website. This is great, especially if you plan to speak or guest, or you plan to do this very often. I do have one on my website, and I will say it is a work in progress. Well, lots of things are changing on my website right now, but that is one of them where I've kind of rethought like how I'm going to be presenting it. But a page on your website where all of that stuff, your topics, your bio, your headshot, all of that lives in one place, and then maybe like some past speaking engagements, organizations you work with, like all of that can go on that page. It is awesome. A Podmatch profile. I know I talk about Podmatch literally every week, but they really do help you to get set up for success in this area. You can also share that Podmatch profile with people publicly, so other people outside of Podmatch can see your profile. You can send it to other guest hosts. You could also send it to organizations, right? And I really love that on the Podmatch profile, they give you things like topics you speak about, questions I'm always ready to answer. There's a lot of different ways to kind of like introduce yourself. And I think it's just even if you don't join Podmatch, it's a nice thing to use as kind of like a template or an idea for yourself. And then I've seen people do something as simple as creating a Notion page. Notion is like a project management software, or create a Google Doc. It could literally be anything. So it does not need to be super fancy, but I just want you to think about the things that you're going to want to make sure are on it. So there's going to have to be some sort of contact information, whether you prefer people to email you or call you, or, however you have people contact you, put that contact information on that page. The second one is links out to your social accounts. Lots of people like to see what else you're up to. So any social accounts you feel comfortable sharing, put those links in that one place. Short and long versions of your bio. Now, what do I mean by that? I like to have one version of my bio that is in first person, which means I'm saying, hi, my name is Emily. I'm a small business copywriter, blah, 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 blah. And then I like to have one that is in third person where literally it is ready to go for them to read it on their podcast. So often that will say like, from hypnosis to carabiners, Emily Aborn, small business copywriter, has written it all, right? So it's in third person. And I might even add something kind of funny in there, like where the host actually gets kind of the credit for coming up with that funny thing, but it was me that wrote it. Now, if you want help with like bios, well, all of this, this is something I offer to people, like a podcast guesting service. So reach out and I would love to help you with that. But I do recommend having at least 2 versions of your bio. Bonus points if you have a longer version of your bio, like kind of like your story. But you know what? I don't think that needs to be there. That's not like super important. So at least 2 versions of that bio. a first person and a third person, where the host is just ready for them to introduce you on stage or at the top of the episode. Next, you're going to want 3, and I would not go more than 5 signature topics, but 3 to 5 topics that you want to be known for or are your most popular, most requested, that kind of thing. And I'll get into that a little bit in a minute. The other thing I like to include is like either sample questions. So like I just said, like, here's a question I'm always ready to answer. Or it could be takeaways, like here's what you're going to get from this topic. Here's what you're going to get from this topic. Or it could just be like a little blurb, right? So things like that. Some people like to bullet these out. I think that's nice. I think it's nice to break up the text in a couple of different ways just to give different eyes and brains different opportunities to take it in. And then a high resolution headshot, not a selfie, please. But it doesn't have to be like a super professional one. I mean, your best friend or partner or spouse can probably take a really good headshot on your phone, but do make it at least high resolution and preferably not a selfie. Also, links to any past interviews or speaking clips. And I've also seen people do a short video intro, which is super nice. Definitely not a necessity, a nice to have. Like I said, sometimes it's really nice to have an opportunity where different brains can kind of soak in the information in different ways. So for example, my brain, I usually will skip right by the video. I might play the audio. I might go listen to an episode of the show, but I don't tend to watch video. So I probably would just read something as opposed to watching the video. But I know I am the exception to the rule. Most people love video. In fact, I have a questionnaire on my client, like when clients are coming to work with me, and I'll say like, do you like video or audio or written? And a lot of people select video or both because they want to see it and hear it. So that's an option too. And then the other thing you could consider adding is like articles or blogs that you have related to the exact topic. So let's say you haven't spoken on this topic yet, but you did write that super in-depth blog. You can link those articles or blogs. I would recommend actually even renaming them so they're like almost exactly like the one you want to present, and you can link out to that. The key is to have some place designated where all this information can be accessed. All of this information can be quickly read through, gone back to when they need to cut and paste your bio or when they need to grab your headshot. Like it's all in one place for the people who are going to bring you into their community. And bonus, they could actually share this link with their community if they wanted to and say, here's who Emily is, here's, what she's going to be speaking on, blah, 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 blah. So on to the important stuff. I mean, that was all really important, but more important even. What are you going to talk about? What are you going to pitch to talk about? So this is like my favorite topic. If you have not already spent time clarifying your message a little bit and like creating those 3 to 5 most popular go-to topics, I would say, let's do it. Like now is the time, my friend. So I started with a couple of questions for myself, and I'll pass those on to you now, and you can just kind of be thinking about them. The first question is, what do you want to be known and remembered for? What do you want people to walk away feeling after every single conversation that you have from the stage or behind the mic? What is something you see in your industry that worries you or excites you? Something that you maybe want to warn others about, or a mistake that you made that you want to tell the world, avoid this, please avoid this. Do you maybe have a story of overcoming or becoming that is powerful and could help somebody else? Do you have a framework or 5 tips or a strategy that could be helpful to somebody else? And then what sets you apart from other people who do what you do? What have you maybe talked about or spoken about in the past that has either gotten really great feedback or that has lit you up, or audience have it just has made everybody kind of in the audience really, really excited? One of the ways I find these topics of mine is twofold. First of all, I find what I'm like really excited to talk about. Like, what is the hot spot? And I will hone in on that. So what's like my quote unquote soapbox, for lack of a better word. The second way, though, is when I am presenting a workshop, or when I am doing a podcast, or when I'm a guest on somebody else's show, and the audience gives us amazing feedback on the particular topic. Like, I recently did a podcast episode on red flags for service providers and like being able to identify yellow, green, red flags. And people gave me such good feedback on the episode that I ended up doing a workshop on that same topic. And that workshop, the audience, a lot of the members of the audience reached out to me after, wanted to connect, told me that was such a fantastic topic. It was so helpful, et cetera, et cetera. So then I know there is some magic in there. And that is something that like I might want to focus on or speak on. Now, I don't know in the case of that specific topic if I will be doing more like around that, but it's a good way to kind of figure out what your topics are going to be. And that is how you can kind of start narrowing in on those three. Now, again, I would do 3 to 5 at first that you will present as your pitch. And when you are actually sending a pitch, which I hate that word, but it is the most standard, so we're just going to keep on using it. But when you are actually going to sit down and send a pitch, I really would not send more than 3. You should know who you're pitching to well enough to know like which out of your topics are going to be the best fit. You can always say, I have more ideas. If these aren't a good fit, I've got a couple more, that I can share with you. Or you can find the rest of my topics at this link, or I can tailor something to your unique needs, blah, blah, blah. But I would really encourage you to keep it to 3. So you got your 3 topics. And from these, you're going to then take each topic and list out like clear teaching points. Maybe you start outlining them for yourself if that's how your brain works. Or maybe you like give yourself bullet points, right? Maybe you come up with like 1 or 2 stories for each of your topics that you can use as anchors, as examples. If you're like a kind of person who does really well with like a response, so a lot of people I know, if I ask them a question about a topic, they suddenly have a wealth of knowledge where they couldn't think of anything before. So if that's you, you could even ask like an AI, like ChatGPT, for example, to come up with questions around this topic. And then you can jot down the questions or the answers for yourself as kind of like an outline and craft yourself a blurb about the topic. So when I'm presenting, for example, a topic to SCORE, I work a lot with SCORE Granite Region. And what I'll do is I'll share the title of the talk, a small blurb, like 3 to 4 sentences, is just paragraphical on what it's about, and then 4 to 5 bullet point takeaways that the audience is going to walk away with. Like you will walk away with, or you will walk away knowing how to, et cetera, et cetera. When I'm actually prepping for the talk, I will go back to those bullet points, ask myself them in the form of a question, and use that to guide how I structure the actual talk. So you can do this whatever way it works for you, obviously, but those are just some ideas to get you started. Some podcasters, when having me as a guest, they'll actually ask for questions on my topic. And so it's nice if I've like already kind of come up with those questions. I think it's a really great strategy, to be honest with you, for them and for me, because it helps them get the most out of the conversation, helps me show up really, really prepared. So all right, on the topic of preparation, we're doing okay. We're cruising along here. Now, I am the person who does stand by preparation being key. And I believe this for so many things. Podcast guesting and speaking are no exception. Preparation shows that you read their emails. You are taking this seriously. By being prepared, you are showing them this is not just another Zoom call on your calendar. So if you are doing this event or guest opportunity virtually, just make sure, one way to be prepared very simply is to make sure you have a clean and tidy background. I don't but I don't really think you need some like filter or some fancy virtual one. I would just say don't make the space too distracting behind you, but like some personality is nice, okay? You want to have a good microphone, and I do recommend the Samsung Q2U often for an affordable, decent microphone. I can put a link to that in the show notes. And ideally, you're going to want a quiet space with minimal distractions. By the way, the occasional dog barking for a second in the background, that is fine. What I would say is a little annoying is like you have a leaf blower out your window, or the dog barking is like incessantly through the entire talk. That can be really distracting. Or you're in a busy coffee shop, for example. Like, do the call from a quiet place with minimal distractions, ideally. These things seem really small and like minutia, but I will tell you that as being a former host who had a lot of guests on, these things are really important, and they really help you to stand out. You have to also think of it through the listener's ear, okay? So there are a lot of people, myself included, who cannot pay attention with bad audio. They cannot pay attention through noisy, distracting sounds like the background noise of a coffee shop or buzzing microphone or, a leaf blower. And so if you show up like that, you're going to lose those people. You may also potentially lose a little bit of respect as well. But you basically just made a couple of audience members turn away completely, probably like tune out. So that is something to consider. Like, always put the listeners. I always like to advocate for the listeners. Put the listeners first. This is about them. This is a message you are sharing with them to connect with them after all. So okay. The other way to be prepared is to have an idea. I would say ideally a structure behind what you're sharing. Practice it if you want to with a coach or a friend, or even just the voice memo apps on your phone. Practice answering your own questions, like outline it, do whatever you got to do to feel prepared and at your best. When I am guesting on a podcast, I usually do a few things. I listen to a couple of their episodes because I like to know if they have some sort of set format I need to be aware of. I do read the emails they send, right? Because sometimes those will have extra information like we won't have our cameras on, or we will have our cameras on, or whatever. They sometimes include information in those things. And then I personally print out my own outline. Now, that might seem a little extreme because I do know these topics pretty inside and out, but actually it recently ended up kind of saving my butt in an interview because the host did not remember what we were talking about, nor did they have any questions prepared. So thankfully I had an outline, and it was in this case, we were kind of talking about like do's and don'ts. And so I had that written out, and I was able to really take it home seamlessly. And we had such a great conversation from there because once I got the ball rolling, there were a ton of questions that ensued. So that's just one thing to consider. Like, if you come prepared, it actually saves the host a lot of work. And that is kind of what being a guest is saving the host a lot of work. When it comes to actually putting ourselves out there and pitching, we're going to shift gears from preparation. Here's the scary part. I know it is super nerve-wracking, and I'm not going to lie. It is scary every single time I pitch myself to speak or be a podcast guest. There is also a lot of bad advice out there in the world of podcast pitching. So my first recommendation is that you join myself and Barb Davids and our special guest, Andy Lyons, for our upcoming live on Thursday, October 28th, because we are actually going to walk you through being a standout, great, dynamic, personalized guest with a awesome pitch. And I will include that event in the show notes. We're going to dish out like basically all of our insider secrets as many as we have time for, I should say, in a super fun and engaging way with the three of us seasoned podcasters. It'll be really fun. But for today, I'm going to just give you a few of my favorite pitching tips to get you started. There's just 4. Number 1, be human in your pitch. Like, please, for the love of all things holy, do not have AI write your pitch for you. Do not send the same pitch for every single person you send it to. Templates? Fine. Personalize? Yes. Personalize. I recently did a podcast guest bundle for someone, and she wrote me 2 months later and said, Emily, I got another podcaster telling me that my pitch stood out from the noise thanks to, bum-ba-da-bum, drum roll please, personalization. He said he could tell that I put in time and effort, so I want to give you a big thank you. That is what we want. We want to stand out. We want them to know that it was tailored and personalized to them. So save the dear sirs and dear ma'ams for, I don't know, somewhere where they still accept such things, and be human in your pitch. Do not have AI write your pitch, please. Number 2, show them the value. Remember, we're advocating for the listeners. We're advocating for the community. So make it about them. Make it about their listeners and their community. Why you? Why them? Why now? Why this? Why their people? Why do you care? Show them the value. Show them you care. Show them that you're putting their listeners first. Number 3, include all relevant links and information clearly in a way that makes it easy for them to do their job and make their decision. The last thing you want is them having to go dig down some rabbit hole to figure out whether or not you're a good fit. You just want to make it really simple. Here's the link, here's this, here's that, and then they can make their decision from there. And my 4th tip is be okay with a no. Or a no for now, or just a no altogether. I forgot to mention this in last week's episode, but on average, there's a whole bunch of stats out there, and who knows which ones are actually right. So on average, a good podcast pitching acceptance rate, leading to a successful guest appearance, I'm only talking about podcast pitching right now, not speaking, it's about 1 in 10 or 10%. So meaning 1 in every 10 pitches you send is a yes. Now, hopefully you have a higher rate. I think I do. I think personalizing it definitely goes the extra mile. I think showing them value definitely goes the extra mile. Researching the hosts a little bit goes the extra mile. But that's a lot of no's. So just keep that in mind. Be okay with a no or a no for now. And then when you show up the day of this collaboration, I don't care if it's speaking on stage or speaking behind a mic, when you show up on the day of the collaboration, come a couple minutes early. Come early. Come prepared. Know the format. Is this going to be a monologue kind of thing? Is it a conversation? Is it a panel? Is it live? Is it edited? What's the time? Know the format. Know the audience. I often ask a podcast host who the dream listener is. So who is a person listening that you try to have in your mind every single time? I try to do this with every single episode I record. I'm thinking of you today, Christy. So make sure you kind of have this ideal person in mind, and then you can speak to just one person at a time. I think it goes a long way. Hosts often don't even know what the difference is, but they know something is different. But you're also keeping that person in mind when you're giving examples, when you are, talking about pain points. It's very helpful to have one person to kind of tether yourself to, or a couple of people maybe. But all right, so next one is making sure that you have gotten the host everything they need before time. Nothing worse than scrambling the day of to find everything that you need. Do not sell constantly, right? We want to be teaching and giving generously, and do give a call to action when asked or when it's appropriate. This is still an opportunity for visibility, let's not forget, and marketing. But don't be constantly up there selling. I know I will often say my podcaster bundles can help you with that. And I genuinely just want to help you. So I really don't want to sell you anything. I just want to let you know that there's I don't want you to have to go this alone. So make sure that you are offering what you have to offer, but you're not constantly selling people your whatever $12,000 mastermind. Be conversational and not robotic. We're here to speak human to human, right? If I wanted a robot, I would just listen to ChatGPT talk to me at night. And then I think a bonus, this is after the fact, is, well, actually it's before the fact too, if you're talking about an event, and that is just helping to promote the event that you are participating in. You've heard me refer to Barb and Mine many, many times. That is something we're both collaborating in this, and we're both committed to promoting the event, the opportunity. And then the other one is promoting the episode, or if there's a video or whatever, you help reshare that after it goes live. That goes so far, you cannot even believe. And then I love after the fact to write a review or write them a thank you, a handwritten thank you card, something like that. So that is pretty much everything I have for you today. If you need help with any of this, like I said, I do help with this stuff. I help podcasters to nail down their topics and their pitches and their bios and all that jazz. My top recommendation of how to find places to guest, like if you are looking to be specifically a podcast guest, it's definitely going to be Podmatch. But there are also some good free like Facebook groups out there, for example, and you could join something like New England Podcasters Group. There's some great guesting opportunities in there. And then I have lots of ideas on like finding places that you can kind of dip your toes in if you're looking to start speaking too. So don't hesitate to reach out. I'll give you ideas. No worries at all. And then let's just like take this ship home, right? And make sure that we really understand the power of this, because there is massive opportunity for a ripple effect. It is so magical. And in fact, because I don't think I can really express it as much as I feel it, I have a bonus coming for you this Friday, which it's not me talking, it's somebody else. And I think you are going to love it because it just speaks to this incredible power of the ripple effect. Showing up well is for sure about being a great collaborator. And it is also the key, in my opinion, to ensuring that you are having as much impact as you possibly can. Like when you do a great job of showing up and being prepared and all of these things that we talked about today, you are increasing your impact because you are like putting in the work, right? And then what happens is you start increasing your connections. You get opportunities for more collaborations. You gain credibility and rapport. You get more speaking invites and people share and share and share. The possibilities are quite literally endless, but I do have to end this episode somewhere, so we'll stop there. So on that note, check the show notes. There's lots of good stuff in there. You're going to get a bonus episode on Friday, which I am just dying for you to hear, so keep your ears out for that. We have more collaboration fun in the works for next week. And then please be sure to join me, Barb, and Andy on August 28th for so many amazing goodies on guesting that you're not going to be able to keep those goggles on straight, my friend. Okay. Anyway, I'm getting carried away. Links are in the show notes, and I really encourage you to just review your message this week, start pulling together your assets or your list of assets, and go forth and pitch. You don't need any more prep talk. You have got this. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Content with Character. If you loved the episode, please make sure to subscribe to the podcast, rate, review, and share it with someone else you know it could help. For more content and visibility tips, visit my blog at emilyaborn.com and be sure to connect with me on Instagram at emilyaborn. I'd love to hear how this inspired you to take action.